Well, folks, you obviously live in times of serious upheaval in football and elsewhere in the world. You know, there's famous deaths and the world is turned upside down with certain things. But one thing we can always rely on, someone we can always set our watch to, is Chelsea sacking their managers, regardless of what happens, regardless of who the owners, regardless of the context. Chelsea will always sack their managers at some level of success. So, in case you missed it, because again, it's been a couple of busy weeks in the newspapers, but Chelsea sacked Thomas Tuchel and have subsequently replaced him with Graham Potter. So we're going to take the story, Neil, in stages, first of all, because there have been a lot of stories about this. But to give you the context, the overview, if you will, Thomas Tuchel, who on his first season in Chelsea won the Champions League by beating Manchester City. This was on a year where they had a massive influx of spending, like of Timo Werner and Kai Havertz and Hakim Ziyech. They were all signed in the same season, making use of the money they saved up from the transfer ban. And ultimately, that somehow ended up winning the Champions League. That is, of course, not the full story, but that is in the end how they got Champions League football. Then you cut to another year then where they make another massive influx of money, bringing the likes of Lukaku and so forth, and Thomas Tuchel was expected to gel all this together. He did not. Then in that season, you have, of course, what happens in the invasion of Ukraine to Russia, and Roman Abramovich was very much implicated in that. So he sold the club up to Todd Boehly, who
Todd Boehly.
joined the fantastic contingent of Americans who think they know how football works. To the extent where we go to this summer, and he decides, you know what this club needs? Money. And so he gives Chelsea a lot of money to sign the likes of Raheem Sterling, Aubameyang, Marc Cucurella, amongst various others, while also selling off some players that maybe they should have kept. But separate issue. We get to the season then, and there's obviously upheaval around, mainly because they have no sporting director. Thomas Tuchel is now sitting in two seats as head coach and also as essentially director of football. He has control over recruitment, as does Todd Boehly. We'll get to that in a minute. So there's a few arguments going around. There's a few situations. Thomas Tuchel kind of has a honeymoon period in his managerial roles, as we've learned from PSG and Dortmund. People normally get sick of him after a couple of years, as we've learned. And ultimately, it comes to a head when they've lost some critical games against Southampton and Leeds. Leeds, in particular, was a outright surrender from the team, which I think really does need to be cross-examined. But the watershed was the loss against Dinamo Zagreb, where they lost 2-0 away from home in the Champions League. First game of the Champions League, and you really think they should do better than that. They did not. And ultimately, it was enough for Tuchel to lose his job. So that's the context. And then we get Graham Potter in. But Neil, as is often the case, the story behind the sacking is so much more entertaining than it actually was.
Yeah, Jesus. It's fucking crazy. Like
Well, I shall frame the question like this, right? Who was more at fault for Chelsea's poor start? Thomas Tuchel or Todd Boehly?
Jesus, I'd
How's
say
that for
both
us?
of them. I'd say
Yeah.
both of them, to be honest with you. Like Tuchel, like he's just whinging at it. Like he's definitely whinging at his players,
Mm.
quite a bit. Um, there was quite a few fucking stories going around of Tuchel delegating recruitment meetings to his own agent because he didn't want to be in the same room as the owners. Um,
Love it.
yeah, that he wasn't being given the signings that he asked for, despite the fact that the club spent a record amount of cash in the summer signing. Um, yeah, it's just crazy. Like it's absolutely nutter. It's just nuts, you know. I just don't know what to fucking think of it. And again, like the funny thing is that like after the Abramovich era ended and Tad Boehly rolled
Todd
in,
Boehly.
we thought that like this was the end of this kind of behavior for Chelsea, like the whole constant, paying out hundreds of millions of pounds to sack managers
Mm.
and splashing out vast amounts of cash ridiculously on players. And it turns out no. um so yeah, it's just absolutely crazy. Like it's something to be honest with you, it's something I'd have a lot more time to decompress on, only for the fact that like so much shit has gone on at the start, from the start of the season. Like this has just been a crazy ass season, and this is just one crazy thing that happened in a litany of utterly crazy fucking things, which is why
Mm.
I just need a few minutes to just decompress the whole thing and go.
You need to sit down sometimes when you're talking about Chelsea, even by itself. Like it's like where do you start? Like
Yeah, I
what
mean, like
part of the excavation do you begin with?
exactly. Well, you can start with like last summer's transfer window season, which was probably the worst ever. you know, Lukaku. Um, oh,
Very good.
it's just crazy. Like, but nuts. Like it's fucking. I don't know. I just not really, to be honest. um,
Well, let's start with Tuchel then, shall we? So, like the action on the pitch, then could you really attribute it to his tactics? Because again, he has a particular way with the back three and wing backs, and a very different front line. In a sense, where almost the front line is almost facing away from goal rather than actually targeting towards it. He always seems to have his number nine looking for the ball as opposed to making inward runs. And the reason for that is to make his wingers pierce the back line for him, essentially. So that's one thing. And I think the Chelsea players just didn't really understand that or didn't like it to the extent where I think they just eventually just stopped bothering because the more he was trying to get his point across, the more they stopped listening. Which is a shame because I think a lot of players did actually quite lean into that. I think when they got Cucurella in, like he was a perfect fit for that system because even in the game against Spurs, actually when he debuted, he was fantastic. He was such a vast improvement than Marcus Alonso. And Alonso's a horrible player. He's a liability, but
yeah,
he works very well as that wing back. Because after all, you don't need to fucking defend if you're a wing back. Let's be real here. But I think the issue was that, and it's been an issue that Chelsea have had for a very, very, very long time. Their recruitment has been quite poor, particularly when it comes to their strikers. I think they can get defenders in and midfielders in, no problem. I think they have a lot of very turgid midfielders in a sense where a lot of players that do the same role. Do you really need to play Kante and Jorginho at the same time, for example? Do you really need to play Kovacic and, say, Gallagher at the same time? So you have a lot of players that are the same, theoretically the same. And then you have a strike force that doesn't really make sense. Like you're switching from players to like Timo Werner to Romelu Lukaku to now Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang or Raheem Sterling, depending on your fancy. But ultimately, if you just kept Tammy Abraham, you could have just solved all this altogether. Like the actual pursuit of superstars annoys me so much at Chelsea because you had the setup there already. You just didn't. You chose not to use it.
yeah, pretty much. I mean, uh, also like with regards to the recruitment as well, like players when they're being chopped and changed, like in terms of formation in the middle of a match, like even just take the Zagreb match, right?
Yeah.
Because we say that that was the touchlight to the fuse of his contract going up in flames. But like when you look at that game, they started off in a 3-4-3. Then
Yeah.
in the second half, they switched to a 4-4-2. Then he made all five substitutions, and he ended up the game in a 3-1-4-2.
Yeah.
So you had the bizarre side of Raheem Sterling dropping into central midfield, um, Mason Mount out on the left flank,
Yeah.
Hakim Ziyech going from right wing to left wing back.
Hmm.
I'm gonna get the funny thing, like there's gifts going around of when he was relayed the message of where he was going to have to switch to being played, and the look on his faces of, "Are you sure you're talking to the right player?
Yeah.
Is this not meant, was this not meant for somebody? You meant me. Holy fuck! He's got me playing at left wing back.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like." And I just think the players just were just going, yeah, I don't think this guy really has a clue what he's doing. Like, you know,
Mm.
when you're playing players constantly out of position in weird formations, chopping and changing them out, nobody actually has a fucking clue. Like we don't know. It's not like when you've got players who overlap, who switch.
Yeah.
Take the Arsenal women's, team where the wingers constantly switch in an
Mm.
in a effect to kind of keep the opposition on their toes. That's a natural part of how the team organically construct and works as attack. With
Mm.
Chelsea, it's like we've no idea what we're doing. Fuck it. Let's get Mount out into the left. Oh, it's not work. Let's put him back in the middle again. well, we got Sterling there. Fuck him. Just move him up front. Then what do you do with the other guy? Just fuck it. Like,
Just shut
just
up and stop
play.
asking questions. Yeah.
Go sports ball. Um, like it's fucking crazy. Like, um,
Okay.
so yeah,
No.
it's just, but that's my point as well. Like, I can't, I don't blame the players. Yeah, their hiring has been fucking a sham.
Yes.
Um, but I think probably one of the worst hires they've had is Tuchel, even though he brought them a Champions League. But he was
Mm.
just he can't do anything with these players, and it remains to be seen if Potter can.
Well, this is the burning question because I think like I think Boehly has an idea of what Chelsea should be, and I think he looks at Man City and goes, yes. But he also sees Man United and goes, yes. Because like Man City, he wants to be a centre of excellence for football, and I don't think we can all respect that because I think every club wants to be a centre of excellence for football. But then he also wants to sign marquee players to basically boost sales and to stimulate whatever kind of like shirt sales he wants in America for Chelsea. That's why he wants to get the likes of Sterling. That's why he was so desperate to get Ronaldo, I think, because if he had got Ronaldo, that was like his stamp on the league. This is like, okay, let's take the dicks off the table for a second here, Mr. Boehly, right? You are in charge of a football club. Sometimes you have to go with what the manager wants. If the manager doesn't want Cristiano Ronaldo, you don't go for Cristiano Ronaldo, right? You go with what the manager wants. And then surely you've heard of the story about the squad planning meeting that Boehly and Tuchel had.
What
Now,
Todd Bowley's revolutionary new fucking formation?
formation. Yeah. Now, listen, we've had stories like this before, and it is a little bit of English arrogance over the Americans not understanding the game. It's a bit Ted Lasso, I'll be honest. But nothing really speaks Ted Lasso than getting the formation fundamentally wrong. This is like, okay, listen, right, Thomas. I know you're not keen on the Ronaldo signing, but let me tell you this: we're gonna put Ronaldo up front in a tree with a midfield four and a defensive four. How would you say that? Yeah, 4 plus 4 plus 3 plus 1 is 12. Yeah, that's going to be a great formation. We have one extra fucking player.
Didn't he not even mention Mendy in the squad lineup or
Yeah,
some
no,
shit like that?
he doesn't like Mendy. He prefers Kepa. Like Mendy is just not counted. Strangely enough, like look, we can talk today about that, but we'll talk back on Todd Bowley in a moment. But as I said, Tuchel gone out the door, and now it's Graham Potter season, and Graham Potter is perhaps the hottest property manager wise in the market at the moment, and for very good reason. Like he's got a remarkable project at Brighton that he took over from Chris Hughton to great aplomb. Did something magical with it, and the recruitment at Brighton is phenomenal. Now, here is the burning question again: how much of that is Graham Potter's tactical mastery, and how much of it is Brighton being so well run that they're practically like magically generating players out of the ether? Like, how do they find Alexis McAllister? How do they find Moises Caicedo? How are they finding these other players that are going to come into now this season and think, holy fuck, how has no one else found these? How is it always that Brighton just happens to find a scout in Ecuador or in Paraguay and finds these players? That's what other teams should be looking at. Does it help that Glenn Potter's a head coach and he plays a genuinely pleasant back three system and very good football? 100% yes. But can he replicate at Chelsea is the real question here. And I think that's where he needs time, I think.
But I think the main thing about Potter is communication.
Yeah.
Because player communication, like people like whenever you read the op-eds on him,
Mm.
they always mention the tremendous human qualities that he has, and I'm not disputing any of that. I actually do think Potter is a sound enough, looks like a sound enough guy. Like with a lot of the managers in the league, he's probably high on the list of ones I'd want to go for a pint with. It does
Yeah.
seem like he'd be quite a good laugh.
Mm.
But what they stress is proper player communication, and that's something that was massively lacking from Tuchel. In the second half of his stint at Chelsea, apparently Tuchel did not initiate a single conversation with one first team player for more than a year,
Yeah.
offering no guidance on how the player could get back into the team whenever they fell out of the starting 11. Like he would hold two player meetings. So one for the one for the players who wanted to stay and fight for the club, and the others who were all uncertain and kind of minded to leave. And you
Hmm.
just go like, that's not effective communication. What the fuck
Not
are
at
you
all.
doing? Like, how do you do that? Like, I don't understand how that even comes across as a good idea. Um, and that's the thing. Like, the huge thing about players wanting to leave Chelsea towards the end of Tuchel's tenure was that they just weren't talked to. Not they felt like they were isolated. They
Hmm.
weren't given advice on how to improve their situations. You know,
Yeah.
and I think that's one of the main things that Potter will sit down with every single one of the players and go, right, you're definitely in my factor. You're definitely in my thoughts for the season. If you want to play like this, how open are you to that? Oh yeah, boss. Yeah, definitely. As
Hmm.
long as it gets me on the pitch, I'll fucking do what you want me to. Groovy. Players that aren't in the squad, they'll be sat down and go, "You want to get back in? This is what you have to do." So
Yeah.
I think he'll improve that at the very least because that's always been his hallmark or one of his hallmarks.
Yeah, like I think it's even like well, look, we remember Graham Potter like ultimately not from the Brighton job, but we actually remember his work at Östersunds because he brought a let's be fair, a semi-professional Swedish team to the Europa League, and indeed got a very good game out of yourselves a couple of years ago. That's when he really got on people's radar because people go like an Englishman in Sweden, this never happens, and rattle their fucking gammon to do so. But but even from a tactical approach, like Potter was the right person to replace Tuchel because ultimately the formation doesn't change. The system doesn't change that much. It's now just what you do with those players now. How do you change the way they play? Back essentially, it's something familiar, but it's also a little bit more imagination, a little bit more experimentation. Because I can see him doing something with Aubameyang that he does with Welbeck at Brighton. Like Danny Welbeck, we like famously has injury problems galore. But last season he played I think almost nearly every game for Brighton, or
Mm.
at least he was fit for most of it. But tactically, he plays such a good role for Brighton in the sense where he opens up space for the likes of McAllister and Gross to score. It's no like coincidence that McAllister and Gross are scoring so much for Brighton this season because of how well they plays. So that's one thing. Aubameyang can be the door opener for, in this comparison, Sterling or whoever plays on the right, which is presumably Havertz or maybe Ziyech in this case. This is also an issue that he has to have now is actually getting players to stick to one position. Because I think, as you said, there's a lot of confusion in the end over where everyone was actually playing in the end. Because like you said, how many positions was Mason Mount playing in the end? Like he was being shifted, like stunted out left. I was like, Mason Mount is not a left winger. Like he's a good player. He's a great player in the number 8 position. He's not a fucking left winger.
No.
Like not a chance. And Kai Havertz, as much as I like him, he's not. I don't think he's a false nine. So he has to find a more rigid role for these players and get a good team going. I think in Salzburg, like I think he just needed to assess things. Like I know we're making a lot of a bit of a draw against particularly well-run club in Red Bull Salzburg, but it's a start. It's something at least. He's got two games against Milan now coming up after the international break, and that's I think the real acid test because AC Milan is a ragtag bunch of marauders, and they will take advantage of any weakness.
Oh yeah, the
That's the
fucking
thing.
piranhas.
Absolutely. So, so getting back to essential question then. So we've answered about the Potter thing. Ultimately, we think the Potter appointment is a good deal. Is a good idea. That we
It'll be
both
good
agree
for the
on that.
harmony,
Yeah.
because, but then again, like the morale in that squad couldn't have really got any lower. Like Tuchel was
No. No.
openly fighting with his players. I'm like the massive arguments he was having with Werner.
Yeah.
When Werner said, "Well, actually, I want to get the fuck out of here because you're not talking to me. You're not including me. I don't know what I'm doing here.
Mm.
Like, get me the fuck out of here." Um, and then like the only thing Tuchel had to say about this was, "We're not selling you to another Premier League club," because Werner was initially due to go to Newcastle
Yeah.
um, before he was plugged back out to Leipzig.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I'm like, that shit's not going to happen under par.
We hope
I'd
so.
say that. And also I think with Potter as well, like the funny thing is that they really should have pulled the trigger on this, or at least told the players that like Tuchel's time was up long before. because I'm like, there's huge kind of rumblings in Italy that like, with Lukaku being allowed to go back to Inter on incredibly favourable loan deals to a club who'd
Yeah,
sold him for 100 million quid. But there's like huge rumbling from his camp and in a lot of Italy that Lukaku, had he known Tuchel was out the door, would have stayed, like would have been open to staying. And I was like,
yeah.
do you think Potter would have been able to work really well with Lukaku? I think he very much would have. You
Uh,
know,
yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't know.
I think he really would have worked very well with Lukaku. I think him and Lukaku would have been really good. I think Lukaku
Okay.
would have liked a coach that tried to personalize it, get personal with him on a level and go, look here, like you're the big fucking guy. We're just going to build a squad around you. Like
Yeah.
you're signed for 100 million quid. We're going to do a whole lot with you. You just need to alter your play in this slight way. And guess what? You get a lot more goals and assists.
Mm.
Lukaku's going to go, you know what, boss? I'm all for that. You tell me what to do. I'll fucking do it.
Yeah,
You know?
that's fair.
I
Yeah.
think that's the thing. And again, Werner as well. Like Werner's a decent enough player, quite good striker, good enough forward. I think again, had he known that Tuchel was on the way at the door, he probably wouldn't have been kicking it to get out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, the Power will give some stability to the player exodus and raise the morale because again, the main thing about him is that he's quite a nice guy. He's quite a personable manager. You know,
Yeah. I think
they still
I
have
think
issues
you
over Kante. Kante's refusing to sign a new contract,
mm.
but I think
Well, it makes me
Tuchel.
wonder what is that? Is that a Tuchel a hangover from Tuchel, or is it
Oh yeah, it's definitely a hangover from Tuchel because Tuchel was quite iffy about the club offering Kante a new contract given his injury
yeah,
record.
yeah, I did.
Um, yeah, so that's a hangover. So Potter's got some creases to iron out in the squad.
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
Uh, yeah, it's gonna be interesting anyway. And I think if they want to show that degree of patience, I think it will play out in the end. But they just need to not be Chelsea about this. Let it play out. Give them a year or two to bed into players. Let the system work over. Because again, look at how this Brighton team were going. If Potter had stayed this season, they could have easily challenged for Europe. Like this, that was the form they were showing. And let's be honest, like this Brighton team, I have no like concern over who they will recruit as a replacement. They will find someone as good as Graham Potter to fix it, you know. And even then, like at the moment, they've got fucking Adam Lallana taking over the team. It's like what?
That's
Fucking
going to
see
be
that?
something, yeah.
Yeah, crazy. And it's Adam Cross as well. So the two former Brighton players actually in the coaching there. So like they're covered. Now to end this little segment on Chelsea, shall we have a laugh at Todd Boehly? Um,
And Boehly.
this this Ferrari about the All Star game. Now, again, we had a bit of a laugh about the 4-4-3 and all this sort of stuff, but I do want to defend him a little bit here, right? Because he has been horrendously misquoted. The actual conversation he was having, this was about the football pyramid and how money needed to kind of trickle down from the bottom. So when you were looking at when he was making conversations, he was basically using the MLB as an example of that with the All Star game or the NFL. I can't recall having the All Star game and basically suggested a North versus South All Star game. Now, I
Well,
know it was a
it happens in all of them,
in
pretty
all of them, yeah,
much. It happens in the MLB, which is the baseball. It does happen in the NFL, and it happens in the NBA
yes,
because of how American sports are divided into two conferences, North and South.
yeah, they don't often play each other.
It's
So,
it's it's easy enough to get like basically two collections of two of the best teams of players on opposing sides.
yeah, exactly. Now, no, obviously the league, the football league system is completely different to that. It's not franchise sport like a lot of American sports are. But his point, I think, was actually quite interesting in a sense where, yes, you could have an all star game that generates a rake load of money, but what do you do with that money?
Who does that
And
money go to?
where does that money go to? What can you use it for the league pyramid? Can you stimulate the lower leagues to essentially be that trickle fee system? I think the comparison he used was like if you don't have the college football, you don't get the NFL because where else would you get the players? Where did you get the recruitment? And his point is quite valid. In football, it's a wider circle around Europe and other territories for sure, but it's still the same principle, isn't it? It's like you do need to stimulate the lower leagues to do that, but an all-star game probably is not the way to do it because all it's done is just made the every kind of blue-blooded journalist scoff at the idea of these crazy Americans coming in to like Americanify their sport. It's like lad, you've been singing the praises of the fucking of FSG, of the Glaziers, and covering all these other arseholes for years, and then suddenly another one comes up with a crazy idea, and you think, "Ha! Look at this guy! Huh? He's got a terrible idea. What's the actual idea right now? Saudi Arabians, great. No, let them in. Let them in. Let in the Arabians. Let in the Iranians. Like you can't just pick and choose what foreign money you want. You know what I mean? What's good and what's bad. If you want American owners, this is the shit you're gonna get. Okay, like some people are morally dubious. Some people are just fucking delusional. All right, you can't pick and choose what you want. You know.
Oh,
So I do
absolutely.
understand.
He then goes on to talk about the multi-club model
Yes, which
that
has been
he
very successful. Like,
which he was shouting on about. But he's like, oh, the challenge at Chelsea is to like loan them out to other clubs. You put the development in someone else's hands, and they need to, get pathways into the thing. And then he referenced like Red Bull with Salzburg and Leipzig and City with their fucking web of clubs.
yes.
But I was like, mate, you own Chelsea. You've been wrestling with this for the better part of a fucking decade. Like
The
Vitesse
unofficial
Arnhem,
link to Vidas Arnhem, yeah.
exactly, Vitesse Arnhem are known as Chelsea B because you've loaned them so many fucking players for years on end. Like, what are you talking about? Did you not research the club you bought before you bought it? Like, you're literally complaining about not having the structure of a club, then bought of the club that you have. Like, that's exactly what you got.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy. Like, um, it's hilarious. Like, I
Mm.
think he kind of basically wants to take that sort of watered down bit of what they've got with Vitesse M and just basically pump it full of steroids and just beef it up, you know?
Like I said, I think when you hear what he's saying, like I mean, other teams have done that, but again, one of the teams that have done it really well is Brighton. Like they have feeder teams in Belgium and in Spain, I want to say, but they have one in Belgium in Union Saint-Gall who was a nothing team a couple of years ago, but they promoted themselves over and over and over again to the point where they were competing in the Champions League. They were narrowly missed out on the Champions League. They got beaten by Rangers. This is a team that should have won the Belgium league, but the Belgian league genuinely has a playoff system that I think engineers as so Club Brugge and like win it every year. I think it is generally fixed. Like it's like smaller teams aren't allowed to win that league. So they would have won it either way. I think Leicester have a feeder team in Belgium as well. So the system is like so other clubs have done it before. Just Chelsea have been like cloak and dagger about it in the past. At least some teams are honest about it. And that's the difference. Now again, new regime, maybe he'll just go, do you know what? I decided I'm gonna buy Wimbledon. Like, any reason why? Nope, I just like the name.
No, no,
Like,
no. They're going to go for like, they're probably going to swag up, given Boehly's comments, probably going to swag like a Portuguese club. They were
yeah,
talking about their 18, 19, 20 year olds. They need the GB points, the points to
yeah,
get into the Premier League, to get into the UK, given that they're no longer in Europe. So he's just talking, get them out of South America, get them to Portugal,
yeah.
places like that, and then get them on the pitch for Chelsea. He actually made a decent enough point there, I have to admit. Like,
Yeah,
we joked about him being slightly clueless earlier on with the All Star games, and yeah, that is a pretty fucking stupid clueless
yeah,
statement. I mean, like, I don't care. You can cut that cake any way you want. But this one he made a really good point in, and it was kind of overshadowed by the fact that at the start of the point he mistakenly classified De Bruyne and Mo Salah
yeah. As a
as
academy.
his Chelsea Academy products,
Oh God,
which
that
led
rage
people
off
to
the
kind of
phone.
just write off everything else. But he's made
Yeah.
actually quite a good point there in that, he's going to, they just need development clubs, get the players out of South America,
Yes.
get them their points because they won't have played international football and they won't have met it up. Um,
Mhm.
so basically, they're just looking to really pillage a lot of those South American clubs for a lot of these gems.
Like
Which
Brighton have. Like
like
Brighton
Brighton
done
have,
that.
like
Yeah.
Brighton have, and also like Arsenal have as well.
Yeah. Exactly.
We're well in there. Fuck it.
Other teams are doing it. You should
We
do it
we
too.
we hired the former developmental leader of the Selecao as our
Yeah.
sporting director because he was a former fucking player. Hey, like,
Go figure.
go figure. Holy shit! We signed one of the top Brazilian forwards from a direct rival because Edu knew him so fucking well, and it was the one who brought him into the Brazilian national team in the fucking first place.
exactly. Yeah,
But like, yeah, I mean, even talking about academy players, so they've got other academy players out on loan, like in Livramento and Abraham. So they know exactly. Well, not they're not on loan. They sold them
they're
off,
gone now, but they're good examples of players they could have been able to keep.
but they do have buyback clauses in those contracts,
Yeah,
so they know exactly how much money they're going to have to spend to get them back. And I think
mm.
they will pull the trigger on Abraham from Roma.
They'd want to really. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm like, who do you have up front?
Bamiyang.
Fuck all.
Yeah,
Bal. Yeah, yeah. Aubameyang when he takes off his mask now, you know.
yeah,
But like it's crazy. Yeah, but you made a good point, which was sadly overshadowed by the fact that he started off by making a kind of embarrassingly bad point.
yeah.
But
Like that's the thing when when American guys like that kind of talk about football, they sometimes just show their arse in their ignorance. But like I said, but then again, like, this is the thing when you do have people like that who have the influence and have the money, like if they're making good suggestions, how bad else is the system? You know the kind of way. Like he looks better by comparison, but like I said, you can't look at like the some of the feeder clubs. Like it's wild west in other leagues. There's nothing to say he can't just pump a regular of money into, let's say, just let's pick a random Portuguese club. Let's say Vitória Guimarães, right? Vitória Guimarães here. Todd Boehly wants to sign your club. Yes, take everything. Call it Boehly FC. Just give us the fucking money. We're desperate. You know, they'll be delighted with that. You know, you can't say they wouldn't because they'd have a direct feed of Chelsea youngsters, one of the best academies in the world, pound for pound. Fuck yeah, they'll take that. Well, they'll take that fucking hands over fists, like, you know. Um, but yeah, like it's at least this is the world view we're getting from Todd Bowley now. Now he has Chelsea under his grasp, and he's been basically spending fuck tons of money, every day and every time. Surely there's going to be something vast improvements. Either that now or like Graham Potter's gone in 3 months. It's very hard to tell with Chelsea these days.
I don't know. I mean, there's jokes going around. It's like, oh yeah, in 3 months' time when he sacks Potter for not winning the World Cup, um,
He didn't win. Didn't win the Champions Bowl.
yeah,
Well, it's that.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Europa Championship.
I think in a few months he'll have tempered himself to actually what the fuck he's running
Yeah.
in Chelsea in the Premier League.
Or at least get
Um,
someone who knows what he's talking about. I think he has his heart set on Michael Edwards, but
mm,
Edwards has gone on record to say he doesn't want to be in football yet after the Liverpool stuff because that was a fucking hard job. So I think he has his heart set on him in particular, but I don't think he'll take the role. So you'll need to find someone else.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, well, at least Bodie's passed the check of. Well, sorry. Funnily enough, he's passed the test of will this guy spend money? I don't think anybody can dispute that he's not willing to spend the
He spends
fucking money.
money.
Can anybody? No, that's demonstrable fact. This guy wants to sign big ass checks for
Yes.
players. Um, it depends. Like, thankfully, he's going to give. Unfortunately, none of the signings were kind of dictated by Potter. I would have been really interested to see what Potter would have done with this transfer window. I think it's kind of stupid to get a go through an entire transfer window, then sack the manager.
Yeah,
You know,
that's the dumb timing of it. Yeah.
that's kind of stupid. But again, people were like, "Well, if it's not working, you got to change things." I was like, "Yeah, I'm like Potter will. I'm like, you might get that bounce off of him, but like,
Mm,
if as it turns out, like we were talking about there, if it, as it turns out, the problem was the players, Potter's not going to be able to solve that.
no.
You know, um, I think it's only part the players. Um, but yeah, it's going to be funnish to watch.
Yeah, they're interesting to look at. I think is the best way of putting it. And whatever happens, I think once they reinvent the wheel with a revolutionary 3-5-7 formation, I think Chelsea will win the league.
Mm.
That's
I
my
mean,
first.
don't get me wrong. Like a lot of there's some ludicrous hysteria around him.
Yeah. Oh,
Which
they're kicking the boy when they're down. Like that's
oh
exactly what.
yeah, I mean, like a lot of it's just playing weird, and there's like I'm just ignoring all of this.
Mm,
Um, so I don't a lot of the ridicule these Bowley's getting is undeserved, but I suppose like this is one of the things like it's set in stone, it's gonna happen. Let's just see
yeah.
what it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Give him time. That's what we're asking for. Give him time. They probably won't give him time. It's Chelsea.